All right, welcome to the inaugural video chat of Exploring Energy System Development. I am Doc Hickey, and today's presentation is brought to you unofficially by Candlebox. I was supposed to be at a Candlebox show today, so in honor of the Candlebox show and all the positive vibes I get from Candlebox, I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to be a producer, not a consumer, and I'm going to launch my Zoom webinar series on exploring energy system development. So without further ado, let's get to it. So today, 4 points of discussion. First thing I want to talk about, just a general overview, aerobic versus anaerobic metabolism. I want to look at the 3 metabolic pathways for program design, and then our takeaways for today. How is the knowledge of energy systems, how is this going to help professionals develop effective training programs during the COVID-19 pandemic? So first thing we take a look at, some operational definitions, aerobic and anaerobic. Pretty straightforward, aerobic with oxygen, anaerobic without. So the main things we look at here, aerobic metabolism, the body can survive aerobically for give or take 100 years. Now anaerobically, the body can survive for give or take 3 minutes. This underscores the importance of developing aerobic capacity, whether you're in an anaerobic sport, an anaerobic aerobic sport like hockey or lacrosse, or an aerobic sport like distance running. Aerobic metabolism is going to be the key. The more developed the aerobic metabolism, the better we're going to be able to perform repeat sprint ability, and we'll be looking at that down the road in a minute. So let's take a look at how all 3 energy systems work together. Over here in this graph, we have the blue being the alactic system, the red being the lactic system, and the green being the aerobic system. We can take the alactic and lactic, combine them, package them up, and call them the anaerobic pathways, and then the aerobic system is the aerobic pathway. So our alactic system right here, in the blue, this is going to last for 0 to 15 seconds. So when I say it lasts from 0 to 15 seconds, what I mean is for the first 0 to 15 seconds of movements, alactic is going to dominate the equation. The lactic system and the aerobic system, they're all going to be working together, but the alactic is the one that's doing the majority of the work. So the alactic system, first 15 seconds, most powerful, but on the flip, it's the one that runs out the quickest. The next one we take a look at is going to be our lactic system. The lactic system really works as a transition between the alactic and the aerobic. It's going to be a bridge. So the lactic system lasts from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. In terms of power, it's not as powerful as the alactic system, but it's a lot more powerful than the aerobic system. Coach Lang will talk about his 800-meter runners. They live right here in this lactic zone. So they're going to be able to produce a lot more power. They're going to have a lot more speed than, say, a 5,000-meter runner or something at 5,000-meter pace. But they're only going to last 2 laps on the track, whereas our aerobic athletes, they're going to last 12 and a half laps on the track. So getting back to our lactic system, it's going to dominate 30 seconds to 2 minutes. It's going to be that bridge. It's going to have intermediate power, intermediate duration. And then we get into our aerobic system. The aerobic system, anything north of 3 minutes, its claim to fame, low power. And when we talk about low power, it's going to be relative to what's happening with alactic. We can think of an alactic pathway as a maximal shot put or a 1 rep max bench. So a lot less power compared to an alactic, or a lot less power compared to a lactic in terms of relativity. And then long duration. What's long? I don't know. Long for some people maybe 15 minutes. Long for others maybe a 2.5 hour run. So relativity is huge when we're looking at training program designs, implementation. And then again, that's going to be the principle of individual response. So a little bit of biochemistry, a little bit of background information. Let's take a look at our alactic system right here. So with our alactic system, we have ATP. ATP is the currency for muscle contraction. The body needs ATP in order to make the muscles go. So in our alactic system, the body takes a molecule of ATP and splits it. It just breaks it down into an ADP and a free phosphate. And this is instantaneous. Boom. I got to get a better snap, but not working today. So, but the splitting of ATP into ADP and P, it's instantaneous. It's a lot better than my snap of the fingers today. And this is an extremely efficient or a very clean pathway. So in chemistry, we talk about our reactants on this side and our products over here. So our reactant is just an ATP. It's just going to get broken down into an ADP and a free phosphate. And then there's not a lot of mess to clean up. So the body is going to be able to take this, throw in a little bit of creatine, and run it backwards to create ATP again. So it's a two-way street. It's very efficient. The problem is it's going to require a long time between maximal efforts in order to fully recharge this system. So let's take a look at what I mean by a long time. The Bulgarian weightlifting team would do a heavy triple. So they would do 3 reps of a bench, 3 reps of a squat, 3 reps of an overhead press, and then they would rest 15 minutes between sets. So they would do a maximal 3-rep lift. By the time they finish that 3rd rep, the bar is moving very slow, and the mechanics are very good, but they couldn't do one more without poor form. So that's the end of that set. They would rest 15 minutes to allow this system to run back this way to recharge that ATP and then go again. Let's take a look at another example for maximal sprinting. When we talk about maximal sprinting, one of the things that one of my strength and conditioning buddies, Coach McConnell over at New Jersey in the National Hockey League, talks about is intent. And so when we talk about intense, I need you to cover 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters as fast as you can. Maximal effort, all out. For every 10 meters that athlete runs with maximal intent, they need to rest for 1 minute. So when we talk about letting this alactic system reload, it produces a lot of power, but we need to have that recovery. So for every 10 meters of sprinting, they have to rest a minute. If I have a team doing repeat 40-meter dashes, it's going to be repeating every 4 minutes, because we want this to be a maximal sprint workout. We want it to be a maximal alactic workout. When we start to shorten the intervals, it becomes more of a conditioning workout. And then hold that thought, because we're going to get to that in about two or three slides. So our lactic pathway. In the lactic pathway, classic example of the lactic pathway is going to be your 800-meter runner in track and field. If you want to look at some good lactic work, Google Nick Symmonds, 800-meter runner extraordinaire for the United States, and look at some of his best races. And this is where he lives on the track. He lives in this lactic pathway. So what's going on here? Well, the body is going to have a molecule of glucose. The glucose is going to be the usage form of carbohydrates. And then the body is going to break it down take that glucose molecule, break it down into 2 ATP, a lactate molecule, and a hydrogen ion. So what's going on here is this is a lot more messy. We have 3 products coming off of this one glucose molecule. The body uses the ATP for muscle contraction, but then it's got to clean up the mess. So it's got to do something with this lactate, and then this hydrogen ion is going to cause some problems. So the lactate molecule ships off to the liver, and the liver is the body's recycling plant, and it undergoes something called gluconeogenesis. The body recycles it into glycogen or glucose, and then it's ready to go again, but it's going to take some time to do that. The other thing we take a look at is this hydrogen ion. So what this hydrogen ion does is, first thing, it reduces the blood's pH. This disrupts homeostasis. Homeostasis is a constant, stable environment. The body likes homeostasis. The body doesn't like dropping pH levels. So the blood pH drops. That's going to interfere with metabolism. The other thing that's going to happen from this hydrogen ion here is it's going to irritate our nerve endings, and it's going to cause that dreaded burn that we get at the end of any high intensity 30, 45 second, minute and a half sprint, full out effort. So the lactic pathway, we want to try to avoid this. And we're going to talk about the whys and wherefores and when we're going to use this. But when we're looking at as a little bit of a preview at what's going on right here, where there are no games, there are no races for the foreseeable future, we need to stay away from this lactic pathway as a prime training modality. Next thing we take a look at is our aerobic pathway. And this one here, again, just like the alactic, is going to be clean energy. We have fuel plus oxygen creates ATP, CO2, and water. So my fuel can either come from carbs or fats. My carbs is going to be glucose. My fats, it's going to be lipids. And they're just going right in here, right into the fuel. Think of that as a gas tank. And then my body takes that fuel, adds oxygen to it, hence aerobic, and it's going to produce ATP. And if my body uses glucose, I'm going to get 36 ATP. If my body uses lipids, I'm going to get at least 100 ATP, depending on the type of lipid molecule I use. But we can just say over 100 ATP per molecule of fats, of lipid. And then for my byproducts here, I don't want to call these waste products, but these are byproducts. And there's a reason I'm going to say that: CO2 and water. So a lot of previously, if you were to look back, human physiology, even say the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, carbon dioxide was viewed as a waste product. But now we understand that carbon dioxide is essential in respiration. So carbon dioxide regulates the uptake of oxygen, and the body's need to get rid of CO2 is greater than the need to bring in oxygen. So we want to think about CO2 as opening the door for respiration. CO2 opens the door. When we breathe out, it opens up the lungs, and out goes the CO2. Our body needs to get rid of that. And then the body says, hey, well, since the CO2's out, we may as well let the oxygen move in. So that's what's going on with CO2, and that's why it is so important in the respiratory process. It's often overlooked. And then the other product we get from an aerobic pathway is going to be water. And that the body is just going to completely recycle that. It can be used for cooling. It can be used for cooling, digestion, blood volume, all sorts of things. So the body's just it's just gonna go right back into the body's internal water table. So why is that knowledge of basic biochem important? So the first thing we take a look at, most sports are going to be alactic aerobic. So a couple of my coaches on the call today, we got Coach Murphy in the hockey world, and we got Coach Prince in the football world. And those two sports are repeat sprint sports. So when somebody asks me, Doc, can you describe hockey? I say, yeah, it's a race and then a fight. So it's a race to the puck and then a fight for position. Or it's a race to a spot and a fight for position. So it's going to be an alactic race followed by an aerobic period of standing and waiting for the next sprint to occur. Same thing with lacrosse. So with lacrosse, it's going to be a 5-second sprint, a 40-yard movement to a certain spot. There you get position, you wait for your shot. You wait for the ball to be moved to you, or if there's a turnover, you go off the field and you wait for your turn to come around again. And then the other one we take a look at, and I know we have a Spartan on the call today, is if we take a look at our obstacle course races or our Spartan races, these are going to be classic alactic aerobic. In a Spartan race, it's 3 miles, 30 obstacles. So you're going to walk or run for 400 to 800 yards, come up on a set of rings, have to go overhand with the rings for about 15 seconds, come off of that, cover another 400 yards, throw a spear, cover another 400 yards, pick up a stone. All these are going to be, all of the physical activities are going to be alactic, but the moving between obstacles is going to be aerobic. So when we start looking at our training program design and implementation, it becomes real important to understand what are my alactic stimuli and what are my aerobic stimuli. Now, the thing that a lot of coaches do is right here at number 2. They'll watch the puck, they'll watch the ball, while not watching what the athlete's doing on the field or doing on the ice. So in hockey, a typical shift, 45 seconds. In lacrosse, NCAA lacrosse has a 60-second shot clock. So what coaches are going to do is say, hey, 45 seconds per shift. Oh, we're going to do heavy lactate work. Or for lacrosse, 60-second shot clock. We're going to do heavy 60-second repeat efforts. But when we look at what's really going on, it's going to be an alactic burst, 5 seconds, and then an aerobic rest period of 20 seconds or so, 30 seconds, and then right back to it. So the key takeaway for my strength coaches is there tends to be an overestimation of the role the lactate pathway plays in intermittent sports. And that is a huge takeaway. If you learn, for my aspiring strength coaches, for my strength coaches that are in the field now, don't overestimate that lactic pathway. It's more alactic aerobic in my intermittent sports. So alactic aerobic, let's take a look at this interplay. Let's take a look at this relationship here. So the aerobic system allows the alactic system to reload on the fly. If I increase my athlete's aerobic capacity, I'm going to increase my body's ability to reload. Plain and simple. So the stronger the aerobic system, the better they're going to reload on that alactic system. So the better they're going to perform in repeat sprint ability tests. We can even look at this in terms of distance running, where with distance running, it's not one steady pace. You're going to have surges, you're going to have hills, you're going to have, in cross country, you'll have uphills, downhills. And there you're even getting some of that alactic. The body's going to be running along at 4-minute and 50-second pace, and then all of a sudden we're going to go up a hill to maintain 450 pace. We're going to have to recruit more muscle fibers, and we're going to have to go alactic. When we come off that hill, if we can drop back into this aerobic zone faster and better and more efficiently than our competition, we're going to be able to create a gap. And then we're going to be able to go on the offensive and beat them and win the race. So this shuttling back and forth between alactic and aerobic is essential in all sports. So let's take a look at this. Repeat sprint ability built on aerobic capacity. I know Coach Murphy has seen this slide before when last summer when I presented out in Colorado at the NSCA Training for Hockey Conference. We used this exact slide, or some of it. So what we have right here, this is a 60-minute bike race. And if you were to watch this race, it would, the velocity of the athlete, the speed of the bike pack would look to the naked eye constant. But what's going on in here is the only thing that's constant is it's a constant surge and a back off, a constant surge and a back off. So it's a constant sprint and then a recovery, a constant sprint and a recovery. If we were looking at this in terms of hockey, it would be a consistent race to the puck and a fight, a race to the puck and then a fight. So with this athlete here, their max power in a rested, recovered state was 1,300 watts. That's a lot of power. So now we take a look over here. Right there, their first sprint was the first time they burned a match. They were at almost 1,050 watts. And now when we take a look here, as the athlete goes on, in the last 15 minutes, their best acceleration was was a little more than half of their max power. And then in their final sprint right there, they were only able to hit 900 watts, or again, less than their max power. This athlete did not win this race. So when we talk about repeat sprint ability, if we were to build this athlete's aerobic capacity, if we were to build up their cardiovascular system, they're going to be able to recover a lot better between these intervals, and between these sprint intervals, and they're going to have a lot better sprint at the end. So one of the things we look at here in terms of developing that final sprint or that final surge in all my sports isn't necessarily maximal velocity sprint work. It could be developing aerobic capacity so that I'm using less of my maximal speed, and then when I get to the finish line, or when I get to my kick point, I'm going to be able to have a lot more speed in reserve. So we take a look at what is aerobic, and this is essential when we look at developing aerobic capacity. So we look at our three characteristics of an aerobic modality: low intensity, long duration, rhythmic activity. Low intensity. So when we look at low intensity, the way I like to gauge it, one of two ways: nasal breathing only, or if we're using some sort of an athlete monitoring system, 180 minus age. This is going to be the Maffetone formula. So when we look at nasal breathing only gives me immediate feedback. Am I aerobic or am I anaerobic? If I can breathe through my nose, I am going to be completely aerobic. If I have to breathe through my mouth, I am going to be anaerobic. So we're going to get into down the road. We're having one of these every Friday. But when we get into gauging intensity, we're going to look at how do we use nasal breathing, or how do we use our breathing patterns to identify is it low, medium, or high, and then how do we use technology in terms of low, medium, high intensity. So immediate feedback is going to be nasal breathing. There's going to be a little bit of a delay between what's going on at my nose with what's going on at my heart with getting this information to a watch or to an iPad. So that's going to be this Maffetone formula of 180 minus age is going to be my benchmark for tech for low intensity. Long duration, what is it? It's longer than you normally go. And again, individual response. No two athletes are the same. One of my athletes right now, his long duration work, 75 minutes. I got Coach Lang. Give me a.
Yeah, quick question, Doc.
Yeah, Coach.
So for the heart rate, are we looking at the average or the peak? So like if I was going for a 30-minute run and I wanted to stay in a aerobic, training zone, do I want to make sure the peak never passes that 180 minus age, or are we looking at an average?
You're gonna go peak, yeah. So you'd set up a heart rate. You'd set up the heart rate zone on your watch, and let's see, 60. So you would set yours up to, you wouldn't want to get above 160. Because we're going to get into down the road when we get into gauging intensity, we're going to have a you get a five beat correction for, you're about 25, so your max heart rate would be 155 in terms of low intensity, and then I would add in an extra 5 beats, so to get you up to 160, and then you would keep your peak heart rate below 160. Does that make sense? Coach?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Doc.
Cool, man. All right. So long duration for one of my athletes, he's going to go out, run, or he's going to go out and do a 75-minute bike ride, and that's going to be long for him. One of my other guys is going to go out and he's going to do a 4-hour bike ride, and that's going to be long for him. So long duration is going to be relative. And then the last thing we take a look at, rhythmic activity. So rhythmic activity, we're looking at walk, run, bike, swim, rowing machine, inline skate, any cardio modality once these gyms open up. And one of the things that again, we're looking at for my master's athletes is to get them out of that movement pattern. So if I have somebody that's a runner and we're going to do some low intensity aerobic work, I may put you on a Stairmaster, or I may put you on an elliptical to get you out of that running pattern. Because when you're locked into that running, when you're locked into whatever constant pattern that you have, that's where we get overuse injuries. So if I can put you in a different movement pattern for 1 day a week, that's going to be it's going to get you out of what you're normally doing, and it's going to add a little bit of variety, and it's going to reduce the risk of an overuse injury. So exploring different movement patterns. Maybe I've always thought about this out in Colorado. Down in Colorado Springs, there's this place called the Incline, and when I'm out there, I'll use that for training, and it's not a hike, it's a climb, and it's a completely novel movement pattern than just going out and running laps on the track. So if I was out there a lot more, I'd be doing a lot more inclines, probably like once a week. So what is alactic? Alactic, 10 seconds, near maximal effort. So anything we're doing with resistance, sled push, sled pull, uphill sprint, kettlebell swing, any body weight movement, anything where we have to overcome gravity, overcome inertia. The one thing that I look at here is that when we're working on the level ground, once you hit about 5 seconds of some sort of a sprint, then we're not generating enough force to really tap into that alactic pathway. Then it's going to be more of just overcoming friction. So, for example, Coach Murphy asked me about some alactic aerobic work. And in hockey, check out a hockey rink. We got the goal line. You got the goal line here, red line there, or a blue line, red, blue, and then the goal line. And what I recommended was to do, when we look at the ANA, the alactic aerobic work would be a full gas sprint from the goal line to the red line. And then once they hit that, or the goal line to the blue line, sorry. And then once they hit that line, it was just a coast all the way down and all the way back and all the way back around to the goal line, hit the goal line. And then we start from a stopping position, full gas to the blue line, and go around again. One of the things stopping and starting are hard. So if we can get our athletes to begin their alactic efforts from a stopped position, they're going to use a lot more energy to overcome that inertia to get them going. So my alactic work, 10 seconds near maximal effort. Anything resisted is going to be perfect for that. So let's put these together. Let's look at an alactic aerobic training method, or an ANA training protocol. So what we're going to do, rounds on the minute. So every minute, at the top of every minute, we're going to do anywhere from a 5 to 10 second alactic burst. And the remaining time, nasal breathing only cardio. So we're going to, I know Prince is got one of his guys is doing sled pushes. So if we're going to do some ANA training with Prince's athlete, his athlete's going to do a 5-second max effort sled push, and then the sled push is done, right into a 55-second easy jog, nasal breathing only, and then back around to the sled, push the sled, 5 seconds, 55-second rest, 10 rounds or more, depending on the purpose. So as a coach, as a strength coach, what's the purpose of this session? Implications. So right now we're deep in this corona time, COVID-19. We don't have any games. So as strength coaches, the first thing to do is to avoid this avoid the lactic pathway. We don't need to be having our athletes take these acid baths. And one of the reasons why in our lactic pathway is that we have these anaerobic enzymes that only have a shelf life of about 6 to 8 weeks. So if we're doing a bunch of lactic work now and there's no games coming up, we're by the time when the games and the contests and the races start back up again, those enzymes will have run their course on their shelf life, and we're going to have to take a break and allow those to reload. We have to have a period of lactic detraining of 1 to 2 weeks. So avoid the lactic pathway now. Focus on your alactic and aerobic systems, build work capacity. Just from kinesiology, work is force times distance. So develop the body's ability to generate force by lifting heavy loads, and then develop the body's ability to cover distance by stressing this aerobic system. And then once a week, put them together in some of that ANA training. So save the lactic pathway for the start of the preseason conditioning. Eventually, sports are going to come back, and then we're going to have a preseason cycle where we can get our athletes reacquainted to working in this lactic pathway. And remember that fitness in the lactic system erodes as quickly as it develops, or it develops as quickly as it erodes. So one of the things that we look at, this is going to be a key takeaway, and Coach Lang is the king of this, is that endurance athletes live in this GPP. They live in this general preparation cycle. So as endurance athletes, we are always developing the body's ability to go a little bit longer, to go a little bit faster, and that's going to be very aerobic dependent. So this is going to be a time of extended GPP. So we're looking at developing our alactic system, developing alactic through lifting heavy loads, and with body weight work. There's a lot of different ways you can create overload with body weight. You want to look at Coach Travis out at Tyler Travis out at Mercyhurst has some really good information on this, and also Coach Morando with Exos in North Dakota has a lot of very good information on overloading using body weight work. So this is going to be an extended GPP time. Spend time to develop mobility, spend time to develop your alactic pathway, spend time to develop your aerobic capacity, and then spend time to put these together once a week. Do an A&A work. Do some A&A work. So next week, and Coach Lang already primed the pump for this one. Next week, we're going to be talking about intensity. What is it? How do we evaluate it? And then get in contact with me. Reach out, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at RunBikeDoc. If you got questions, comments, get up with me, runbikedoc@gmail.com. Something that you want to see covered in this seminar. I'm going to be doing these every Friday, 1 o'clock for the foreseeable future. 10 weeks, 12 weeks, while we got Corona lockdown going on, while we have no sports, helping my strength coaches and everybody grow their minds. So again, I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I had a blast. I hope that you learned something from this. I want to thank Candlebox and Kevin Martin, my good friend, for inspiring me to do this one today. And then tune in next week. Every week, every week we'll have a different background to pay tribute to somebody special to me. So that's all I got. I went a little bit over, like 16 minutes over. So I'm trying to keep these at 20 minutes. So next week I gotta get a little bit better on that one. So thanks for coming, everybody, and have a great week. And if you liked what I did today, just thank somebody else for what they do. That's all I got. Oh, wait a minute. I have 2 participants. I guess I'm not done. Coach Ward.
What's up, Doc? Hey,
How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to see you. Hey, my question would be this. You talked about using this time to build out the aerobic capacity system, which imagine, or if we have done since the start, is there a benefit to potentially introducing a anaerobic block, deloading them, and then working back through that whole process again to then hopefully when you come back to preseason, so let's say it's mid-July, August, whatever it may be, that we can then hit them with another anaerobic block and hopefully work to take them to a certain point different from the first one? Like, is there a benefit of hitting them early, deloading them, and then hitting them again?
That's a good point. And in theory, it looks really good. The thing that I'm concerned about would be, do you know when the team's coming back? Like, if you didn't, like, because we don't know when this, like, if you're working with a PLL guy right now, yeah, you know that they just set their schedule and this is when they're going to have their games. Yeah. So you could definitely hit them now with a lactic block and then deload them and then bring them back. But if we're working with a high school athlete and I don't know when they're coming back, or if they're trying to say come back in September, you could definitely do something beginning of June for 2 weeks, add some variety, and then after that, deload them, bring them back to the A&A. But I would definitely hit that alactic work now. If you're gonna do a lactic block, hit the alactic block now to get them ready to move fast. You'll see a lot of injuries are going to happen when the athletes aren't moving fast, and then all of a sudden they're moving fast in that lactic pathway. You saw that in the NFL coming out of the strike shortened season, where the athletes were they when they had the strike, they weren't doing anything, and then the strike ended, and like 2 weeks later they started having games, and the Achilles tendon injuries were just through the roof. So phase them in with a little alactic, and then hit them with the lactic. Does that sound good? Make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Cool. Coach Lang, give me a minute. I'm going to get you with the unmute. All right, Coach.
So I think when I had put that in, that was for the my question earlier.
Okay.
Which you answered perfectly.
Beautiful.
So we're all set on that.
All right. Thank you. And then we're all set for next week.
Absolutely.
All right. If we don't have any more questions, I'm going to thank everybody for showing up, and have a great day.
All right, Doc, you do the same.
All
You
right,
too, Doc.
Prince.
See you next week.
Thanks, Doc.
Absolutely. Thanks for showing
Thanks,
up,
Doc.
everybody.
That's great.